making our game as exciting and great as it is. I think one of the key factors for me, I've said it before, is the passion and commitment in our sport is unprecedented in any other sport I've been involved with. It is something that I'm very proud and privileged to sit in this seat to do. And one of the things that you have my commitment to is that I will continue to carry that on as long as I'm in this chair, and really, if you like, create this vision for British American football. And I make that very clear. What I'm going to talk about is a vision for British American football, not just for the organisation called British American Football Association. This is for us all to be a part of. This is for us all to sign up to, and in terms of giving us a real singular direction. When I took this role on, I never in my wildest dreams think I would be spending most of my time with Public Health England, Scotland and Wales and going through protocols around a global pandemic. Those things will be with us for some time, I fear. And everything that I now set out, by going for a 10-year vision and a 10-year review of our sport, enables us to look at this in the long term, not be solely worried about what happens next season, although that will be crucial. And I know from many of your questions, and I think that'll probably come up towards the end of my session, and I'm absolutely keen and welcome a wider chat on our flexibility that we will take with registration fees and refunds, but also your thoughts, and you might not give them all today, but I suspect by Wednesday of next week, we will be looking at further reviews of our return to play protocols and roadmaps. That is something that we will review with government, and what that will then do is start for us to create what that looks like for 2020 and 2021 as we return to play. So if there's anything out there that people have and want to contribute, this isn't just myself and or the board members and the group that we have looking at our return to play protocols. This is how we can all look at this collectively, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I want to look at going forward, is how we look at our sport collectively and how we drive it forward. So this comes on the back of 12 months of lots of discussions, lots of Zoom calls, lots of phone calls, no football watched particularly, unfortunately. But one of the things that I made it clear to the board is in the first 12 months, I would, if you like, take a very, very good look at our sport as it is, as it looks, as it was, as it could be, but more importantly, as it sits into the landscape of sport in the UK, and how we land our sport in that landscape and how we look to take it forward. And the big key areas that we're coming out were, is our perception, and do we create a profile and presence, and that perception of our sport is vital for us to have this long-term vision of the purpose and the why of what we all do. I absolutely know from the conversations I had with many people, we will not always agree on everything, and that's a very, very good thing. I think what we want to all agree on is this is what we want to do with our sport in the long term. These are the key areas that we need to review and look at, and then with effect from Tuesday of next week, we start the real detailed work of getting those key objectives and strategies into place with real detail, with your consultation and commitment and involvement, and then some real key measures as to, if you like, keep the score and work out and know if we are winning. So without any further ado, if you're ready, Mark, one of the key things I want to do now is just take you through a short presentation with the key areas, and I'll talk through each of the points in turn. But
can I just say something very quickly before we start? Just to let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded, so that it will be posted so that people will see this going forward. If anyone has a problem, please drop me a note and I can we can discuss separately. Okay, so here you go, Pete.
Thank you.
There.
Okay, so the absolute clarity of what I want to do that is for British American football over the next 10 years is for us to professionalise our game and inspire people to play and play their part. In terms of professionalising, I mean on and off the field in everything we do, from our board, from myself, from the volunteers, from the clubs, from how we interact with our communities. Is the word professionalising is about stepping up and about, you know, getting that perception and presence and profile really clear, and taking us away from that line that we're an amateur only sport. We're not. We're in the main, apart from myself, we're all people who do not receive income, and what you do is highly professional. I just want to make sure that that is absolute clear in everything we do, and really upping the standard of us and what we do, which then in turn inspires more people to play and also to play their part off the field as well. So I really just want to just keep coming back to this. I think it was mentioned earlier in the AGM around our finance, around our governance, around our comms, around our promotion, around our commercialization, that we are absolutely stepping up, because the one thing that I want to make sure we do, and if I might say, one of the slight benefits and advantages of working with government and DCMS and Sport England, Scotland and Wales with the return to play protocols is we've got a lot closer to all of those organisations about who we are and what we are, even more than we already were. So it enables us now going forward to start to tell them about what a great sport we are and the level of investment that they can make into us. So that's my 10 years. This is our why. Everything we will do will be around professionalising what we do and inspiring people to play and play a part. Okay, Matt. And I'm now going to sound like Chris Whitty doing his presentations with the various ministers about. Next slide, please. I really want to then understand as to so what are we going to do in terms of that? And this is our mission statement. It's about us developing a dynamic sport and a high performing national governing body where everyone, and I mean everyone, can participate and perform in that accessible, inclusive, safe and enjoyable environment. And being absolutely clear, this is all around everything we do being focused on the player, their experience, whether they're a 7-8-year-old boy or girl starting to play in the sport for the first time, to the university student, to a club player, to a coach, to a volunteer, to an administrator, to a supporter of a club. You know, everything we should be looking at doing is focused on the player, focused on what they do, and creating the best possible environment that we can for our players. And one of the things that I will talk about now is there will be reference during this vision statement to various other enablers, but I want to really make it clear now. I want to put digital engagement at the heart of everything we do. I think it's fair to say, and I'm not being rude, the level of our digital engagement, our website and other things previously has not been as great as it could be. I'll leave it at that. But one of the key things I want us to do going forward is to have digital engagement at the heart of everything we do, as opposed to just being a separate strategy to what we do. But player focus, professionalizing our game and inspiring people to play and play a part. Thank you. Next slide. And again, so these are now really going to be what unites us and what we do going forward. The 4 key things I've heard in all of the discussions and all of the feedback is absolutely these key areas. It's how we play and participate. It's around our people strategy, the people playing their part. It's the places where we play and how we make them the best they can be, and how they engage with their communities. And it's about us creating a long-term playing pathway to performance. It's not just about Great Britain squads, integral as though they are and important as they are. It's about how do we create that long-term pathway for our players, from putting a ball in a kid's hand at 6, 7 years old to take them through to a podium in LA in 2028 for flag and or a European Championship or a World Championship of football. So these are the 4 key areas. These are our key objectives. Everything we do will be in these key areas. So I'll take you through each and every area separately. There are 5 key things in each area that I want us to focus and prioritize. And these are in no set order. They are, if I was clever enough to create, and I'm indebted to Owen from our comms team who's helped me put this presentation together. But you know, in essence, these are all equally important. You know, think about that circle. All of these things sit inside that circle. They're not a straight line. But the real key thing, and I think it was mentioned in many of the questions I've heard already or comments that were made, we have a great opportunity moving forward with flag football. In 2028, I'm strongly supporting the NFL and IFAF to lobby the International Olympic Committee for flag football to be in the 2028 LA Games. So that means, as we sit here right now, we're 8 years away. So one of the key factors is how we approach flag, how we make flag a key element of what we do, both in schools, in colleges, in universities, and in our clubs and our communities. And probably more importantly, how we engage a wider flag community. We have great club teams who play and win and are successful across Europe in flag football. Our women second in the European Championships. I want flag football to be a key part of the Bucks program. I want how we work with the NFL and their flag program and their new NFL Foundation, which I'm working closely with them on, as to how they can create further investment into flag football in this country. So this is not just that. It is not just a strategy around playing. This is a strategy about developing our game and getting real focus, energy and resource into flag football. So with effect, again, from early next week, we will be starting to create a long-term strategy around flag football. That will be how we engage with a wider number of flag footballers. What is the relationship between each individual player? How do we create more opportunities to play? What those opportunities look like? And probably more importantly, how do we make that game as inclusive as possible, as accessible as possible, and create a real impact, and then linking that into that long-term player pathway. So an absolute key around flag. Equally, and this is one of the areas where we absolutely will get focused, and some work already underway, and a big thank you to the Women's Development Group who have been already starting to work with me on this, is creating that longer term playing and a growth strategy for women's football at all levels. This is not just about creating a successful GB team on the top of the level, although that's important for us to attract players. It's about creating the right time to play. So if we're moving our playing season, so we can start to attract players from other sports, how do we use other sports and transition players into our sport? How do we create the formats in both in schools and colleges and universities, and then into our club structure, and then the formats of football which we play to enable us to be successful on the international stage. So this is, again, a 10-year real focus in increasing and developing the numbers of people and the quality of those programs, as well as the number. So again, real focus on our women's game. And I'm not making any excuses why we should be doing it. We absolutely must have, you know, in a perfect world going forward in that 10 years, we'll have the same number of women playing football as we have men playing football. We'll have the same number of boys, we'll have the same number of girls. It should be an equal access sport. And I make absolutely no apology for making that statement today. Then again, and in no order, I want us to start to review our whole Great Britain National Football League strategy. I said before that we are an amateur-only sport. If we're to grow our sport and be successful on the international stage, to develop players, to retain players, to get players into our football league program, we have to take a good look at what our structure looks like, where our clubs are, some of the travel distances, which we can't undo just purely because of geography, but how do we create our National Football League strategy? What do those leagues look like? How do we create them to be a level of participation, but how do we create the top level to be as highest quality that we can possibly be? How do we create a league which, in terms of at one level, it doesn't cost people to play in it? How do we create, if you like, the Women's Super League I've been involved with in football, in cricket, and the Women's Super League in netball? How do we create this really high top level where we can grow our sport, we can get it much wider in terms of its profile and its promotion? But we have to do that as a whole. We can't do that as a one-off strategy. That has to be across the piece and looking at and a consultation with all our clubs, all our teams, about what that looks like, your involvement in it, but with an absolute clear statement that we're moving away from calling ourselves an amateur-only sport. We have to start to look at how we grow that and how we look at that and how we review that. And again, that's going to be something I'm going to be starting immediately. I've heard it so many times from so many areas. What we do have to make sure is we get the product right and the structure right. And essentially, as a governing body, what we should do as British American Football Association is be a governing body. Ultimately, in the long term, are we the organizer of leagues? At the moment, yes, we are. How do we move that forward so that we can create lots of league structures and competition structures which are right for our game, that grow our game and improve the quality of our game? So there will be a major review around our National Football League strategy, and that will be commencing straight away, but with a real clear view. It's about professionalizing our game on and off the field. It's about creating a profile and a perception and presence for our game, and inspire more people to play and also play their part. My slide deck has just disappeared from my screen. Is that the same for everybody?
Yes, Pete, it's not just you.
Yeah, okay. I think it was Mark of my screen around. Apologies, everybody. Thank you. We're back. And it was a question that was raised at the AGM, and I'm very grateful for it, is, are we happy as an organisation that we invest enough in schools and colleges and our youth and our young players? Because the future of our sport is within this area. It goes from putting a ball in a child's hand as early as possible. It's creating a great environment in school and in that local community and how they link together. It's ensuring that when you play in a school or college, you then link it into your youth participation in your club and in your community. So we're going to take a really, really close look at what that looks like, how we engage with, from the school games through to working with the Association of Colleges, and working with the NFL also, as well as the Youth Sport Trust and Sports England in England and Scotland in Scotland, and Sport Wales for their education-linked programs, of how we create really high quality communities of football, which is based in and around the club, linked into the school and or the college, and creates a real focus on attracting young people into our sport and keeping them in our sport. There are some incredibly good examples around the country. Certainly one that was mentioned earlier in around Chester and North Wales, how that's grown and the schools program has grown. There are many such programs around the country, and what we want to do is make that appropriate for each area, but a consistent level of investment both from the sport, both from our stakeholders, and probably more importantly, how we leverage further investment from government and education into that area. But again, that will be a real key focus. And then we've already started by separating our university football program into the Bucks program in its entirety. With Contact, it's already bedded in. We will look to be now over the next 2 to 3 years bedding in both a participation program and a flag football program into the Bucks program and into the Bucks delivery. There will also be some key work done in and around developing the sport off the field, both from a refereeing, coaching and leadership perspective. So that again will be as part and parcel, and those universities, as many already are, and I know the great work that these university programs are already linked into our clubs, and they're very, very strong in those areas. So we will again be looking to build those communities of football in and around those strategies. So they're the 5 key playing and participation areas. Each one will be a significant piece of work. Each one will need and will be led by our commission leads and key people. Each one will also be looking to recruit people with a keen interest. And again, at the end of this presentation, I'll be asking with Nicole and Mark, anybody who wants to get on board and help us develop these exciting strategies and these long-term visions for our sport and how they land, I'd be incredibly grateful. And we'll also be looking to bring in external professionals who are already working in these key areas to help us create these great models. There are some fabulous examples across sport and across different sports, and we will be looking at how we bring in external expertise into our strategic development as well. But these will all be starting very shortly, probably within the next couple of days, and we'll be putting some information out for you to get involved and what those initial consultations look like. I suspect they will be on Zoom to start with, but we will develop those, and I want to get some of these clear strategies and some performance indicators within the next 3 to 6 months. Quicker if we can possibly do that. Our next area is making sure our people are given every bit of support, and none of this will surprise anybody, and we absolutely must focus on our people, our key volunteers. You're all out there, you're all doing a phenomenal job. How do we support you most effectively? How do we recruit more volunteers to help support you? How do we retain people in the game for longer? How do we then recognize and if you like, reward our volunteers really effectively and getting them all the support and the resource that they need? So that will be a specific British American football volunteer strategy, but it will also be linked into a wider sports volunteer strategy. I think I saw somewhere in the last couple of years, the level of investment that volunteers bring into sport is measured in billions of pounds of investment into grassroots community sport. I want us to see how and what we do as part of that and how we can do that most effectively. The next two, it's like stating the obvious, but we really need to start to focus on that quality and quantity of coaches, how we develop them, how we invest, and we've made some investment recently. We will make more investment in this lockdown. We will look to create a far wider, bigger coaching strategy. Wayne and his board we've already started to engage about what this looks like, looking at a long-term vision, but also looking about what we're going to be able to do in the very short term. Particularly as we are in this period potentially of lockdown again, and how we can support and continuously professionally develop our coaches, and how we ensure that we give all our coaches the best chances and opportunities to improve in their specific areas. And that goes from flag football through to kitted football. What we need to look at is what is our strategy for recruitment, and and where we recruit and how we get younger coaches through and developed, and how do we get coaches from our key communities into our game and keeping within our game and developing them. So again, key part of the work we'll do with the Association of Colleges and Universities is around the recruitment of coaches, but again, not overlooking the existing coaches that we have and how we make them as good as they can be, and to make the best out of all the resources that we can make available from the US, from Canada, and from ourselves. And let's not overlook the quality of the coaches that we do have in this country, and how we invest and support them and share that knowledge across our game. In terms of referees, one of the key factors, and that starts within the next couple of weeks, we'll be looking at how we as British American Football work with Bafa, how we look at creating new resources, different resources, levels of engagement to create, again, a quality. And I think, you know, the quantity is the real challenge, and not so much the quantity, but the quantity in the right areas, and looking at that geography and how we recruit. And again, linking that back into the work that we can do in university programs of how we get officials qualified and into our game. So there'll be a whole piece of work that I'll be working with Davey and his team around creating that strategy. There's already some fabulous work that they've been undertaking during lockdown in terms of training and development, and I guess the referees, like everybody else, are just now absolutely gagging to start and get back out on a field. But until we are, let's see what we can do during this period to recruit more. The next one is very specific. Is the terms that we've one of the exciting things during the last few months is under Colin Allen's leadership on the board, we've created a science and medicine committee. Have got some very, very high quality people from our game and indeed outside our game onto a committee which is going to advise and guide us in terms of our science and medicine, in terms of how we develop that support out to our communities. The type of sport we are is clearly as a contact sport. We need to make sure that we're very considered and how we develop all our people, particularly that off-field stuff. And indeed, what a great, the Science and Medicine Committee at the start of the process would have been great to have had on board as we went into the return to play protocols. But they've been, some members of that committee have been a huge support to me as we've been developing our return to play protocols and guiding us through that. So again, making sure that for us to professionalize our sport, we've got the right levels of off-field support from our science and medical teams, and again, talk about upping the standards and the quality of that support. And a big thanks to Colin and his committee in terms of what they're already doing and clearly will be doing going forward. The next part is one of the real clear bits is as we develop professionalize as a sport, we're quite clearly going to need more people to support our volunteers, to engage with our volunteers. And one of the things that I want to explore in this 10 years is what is becoming incredibly big growth area in sport particularly, and business generally, around the recruitment of apprenticeships and the engagement with our with the apprenticeship scheme. So again, one of the key parts, and this will follow from the strategic plans that we write. Therefore, what is the people support required? What is the structures that we need to support those strategies? So the apprenticeships engagement already had a couple of very, very good conversations with parts of our community who are involved in apprenticeships, which is a great great thing to have when you've got people who work professionally in this area of life. We can then engage with them to support our sport and what we do going forward. So again, probably no surprises there, but the surprises I think will be the depth at which we're going to go into and the real focus that we're going to take in and around these areas. And again, we'll be publishing key performance indicators and in each of these areas to measure and support and know that we're winning. Next slide, please. And then again, this is now back into what I think in some ways is the guts of everything that we do is the places where we play, our clubs and our environments. A big thank you to many people who have been supporting our clubs in the game, not least yourselves out in the clubs doing this. What we're really looking to start to do now is really create that level of support into our clubs. And I don't want this to seem our club development strategy will be a load of asks of volunteers and things that you must do to tick boxes. I'll make no apologies for some of the things that we will want people to do to professionalize our game and to really start to support what we do off the field. But we will really be now starting to turn into what's a real support for our clubs. What do people in our clubs really need? Warren has done a great job already, and some of the starting to develop into our Club Matters program and started to work out what that priorities are. And there'll be priorities whether we play or whether we don't play in 2021. We can really start to get our clubs and our teams well developed to start to understand how they survive, because ultimately clubs will always be there. In any sport, you can take away all of the surrounding detail, clubs will still be there. We are absolutely honor bound as a governing body to support those clubs and find every part of the resources that are out there to support them and the volunteers at the heart of those clubs to develop and create what they do off the field is as strong as the teams and the players that they're creating on the field. And a big part of that will be a format of club accreditation. And again, this is not a test. It's not to see who can get through it. This will be about a long-term development of people and creating different levels of support for different clubs, whether you're an associate club or a new club just starting, or whether you're an established club or team already. What does that look like, and what does good look like, and how can we put a stamp on that to show that? And in many areas, whether in terms of sports councils, some of their investment only comes from clubs that they have gone through a mark of some description or a kite mark, and that's what this will be. Again, I just reaffirm, it will not be a test. It will be about developing you from the position you're at to the position you want to be, and then how we can work with our team, with myself and others in the sport, but also people and resource outside of the sport to help develop that. One of the things I'm currently doing is just really starting to look at all our facilities requirements and facilities development and how we can create better access. Now, this is not about me telling you where you should all play. It will be a little bit about telling you what you should play on as an absolute minimum. It will be about making sure that we then start to get a strategy around how can we access a lot more of our facilities. Now, one of the key things that I'm finding across all sports at the moment is the cost of facility hire is now starting to get to some levels which in some ways is understandable because of the facility owners, but we're going to have to start to look at how we can create better partnerships with, whether that be a football foundation site, whether it be a local authority site, whether it be a rugby club. Indeed, only last week I started to have a conversation with the RFU around their 3G pitches around the country, and also the access to their clubs in terms of how we can create more effective relationships with that. So again, there's a whole piece around getting our facilities developed and already starting to help support a number of people around the country in developing better access and even also better facilities for our game. One of the things I want to have by the end of this 10-year vision is I want a national centre for British American football. I have not got a clue where it will be yet. I've not got a clue what it will look like. I go back to my days in football when the FA built St George's Park. I'm not looking for us to create St George's Park with all that cost linked to that, but I want us to create a centre for British American football which if you like, we can call our own, which is where we have GB games, which is where we have our finals, which is where we come to meet and prepare and talk British American football. It indeed might be regional centres with a national centre, but it's starting to create some real quality environments for British American football to flourish and grow. And that's one of the key parts of what I want to look at now. They'll be looking at all sorts of different opportunities there. I'll be looking at how we might do that potentially in partnership with other sports and stakeholders, but absolutely looking to create in the next 10 years a national centre for British American football. And then absolutely in terms of our places to play, I am absolutely committed to making our game for all, and it's an inclusive game, and I'm not looking for this to be a short-term badge, and I'm not looking for this for a campaign. I want our game, which I already think it is. Can it improve? Of course it can. We have to be more inclusive. We have to welcome more people into our game. And we have to create sure that we are creating that social impact in so many communities and accessing our game for all people. Male, female, it doesn't matter what their backgrounds. And I'm not going to go through the list because it sounds like I'm ticking boxes, but absolutely we will and are and will remain committed to being an inclusive game for all. So one of the key parts of that is translating the work that our inclusion diversity group are doing at the moment and creating an evidence and insight base to then what do we look like going forward and how do we create and what does our game look like as being inclusive. And we'll be doing that over the next month or so, being really clear and translating what that means. Next slide, please. So we go now from our places to play to this long-term athlete development plan that I want us to create of how you can map the 6-7-year-old who has a ball put in their hand for the first time and map that journey through to a world championship final or a podium in LA and beyond, and what that long-term athlete development plan looks like. What are the ages and stages we need to develop our key players? What are the aspects in that long-term athlete development plan of how we transition athletes into our sport? How do we create that long-term affinity with our game? And when do we provide the right competitive opportunities? When do we provide the right participation opportunities? All linked to the age and stage of the development environments in which we put our young people, particularly our very young people when they first come into the game, about creating them as skilled athletes, talented athletes, and creating them into becoming very good players in the longer term. And that invariably comes from creating the right interventions at the right ages and stages of each of those boys and girls as they come into the game. So we'll be looking and working with specialists around UK sport, and each of the sports councils will be looking at working with UK coaching, and indeed how we'll be working with our own coaches in that development of that plan. So anybody out there particularly involved in teaching and coaching who has got that real understanding of putting the player, the young person, at the heart of our game and what we would want them to look like, what would we want them to do at each age and stage of their growth, be delighted if we can get that group established very, very shortly. Mike Callan is working on the DNA, if you like, of our GB teams at the moment, about what all our GB teams are looking like, what they're playing, what their competition program will look like over the next 4 years. Absolutely decimated as we sit here right now. We're currently planning on some activity in 2021. Both from a flag and a contact perspective, working closely with IFAF about what that playing strategy looks like. But recruitment of coaches for the women's team right now is in play. Looking at creating the right structure of coaches and the development of those coaches into that DNA, and how that GB team strategy can be successfully measured in terms of creating the right level of expectation from each of those teams, and how we can set some very challenging targets to develop them over the full 10 years of this strategy and this vision. Looking to ensure that what the partnership support we can get from both CFL and the NFL into their player pathways. Currently, we would now be talking very actively about the work we would be doing with the CFL and the Combine, and then obviously in terms of the NFL International Player Partnership. Again, Mike Callan and his coaches working about how we develop that, and some great support currently from Wayne and the Coaches Association about how we start to create development and the strength and conditioning and the work with our players ready for combines and the like. But more information on that will be coming out. We currently still have a combine for the CFL planned for January, mid to late January. That currently is totally dependent upon the CFL, and we have I have my next meeting with them later next week to start to understand where they're at in their return to football in Canada. They've got some incredible financial challenges at the moment, but again, a real focus on establishing those player pathways into and out of North America and into our game, and from our game to over there. The next two are really very clear about, in terms of that talent development, as we develop that talent, what are the support plans that we look to put in place around those talented athletes? From how do we create and invest and utilize the diplomas in sporting excellence that's out there around our players, and how do we create perhaps dual career platforms within our universities through our talented athlete scholarship programs, and how do we then link what we do in terms of our the academies that we already have and others which are being developed? How do we get those athletes transitioned into, whether it's a university program here from an FE program here, or to North America, or to the right program for delivery and development of each individual athlete? So very clear that we want to put some really strong talent development support in, and also look at the growth of academies and how we engage those academies into our game within British American football. There's some very talented players in both the programs at Bristol and in terms of the NFL Academy in London, and we want to see how do we embed our GB playing talent pathway in with those programs and others as they develop. So there'll be a very clear, most of that strategy will be all built into the same program around the pathway, but hugely important for our long-term growth as a sport. Next slide, please. So those are the key objectives. We now start to get back into next slide you can click on. So as we move from, and there's going to be some culture and beliefs about what we do, and this has been a series of things I've been doing before lockdown and during lockdown, of lots of feedback from lots of people about not so much our values as an organisation, but what's the culture and beliefs of what British American football should deliver. It's been a bit trite in that what I've done is taken all of those words and all of those comments, and what I've heard from everybody is that we're going to be, and we will be, progressive. We'll be innovative and creative in what we do. We will be responsive, and we'll listen to our membership and our key stakeholders and how we develop. We will be removing barriers to participation where they exist, and we'll be inclusive. We will be driven, and in that we'll do the right things and do things right, and it will be enjoyable. We're going to, and I really am key on this one, I want us to create the most engaging playing experience for all our participants. And I'm really keen that we do that through our clubs, through our universities, through our colleges, through our schools, through our all our programs, both on and off the field. That what do we do to create a real pride in what we deliver in our game? And I put on here, and I'm very conscious of this. I think we're all very privileged to be part of this great sport. I certainly am. And I'm proud of the difference that we all make to those individual participants and their communities. And I go back to a very long-standing quote from, I can't remember who it was, but we're merely trustees of this game, and we're honor bound to pass this game on in a better state than we found it. By living out this culture and beliefs, by focusing on professionalizing our game and inspiring people to play and play a part, I think that we can really drive this forward. And to do that, I'm going to talk about these we wills very regularly, and I'm going to be challenging myself, the board, and others to say, are we being progressive? Are we being responsive? Are we inclusive? Are we driven? And is it enjoyable? If you can tick all those boxes, we're doing the right things, and we're doing things right at all times. And we will pass this game on in a far better condition than we found it. Next slide, please. There will be some key pillars to this vision, and many of these are already underway in terms of the fabulous work that Nicole and the board have done around our governance, that the work that we're already starting to do around our financial and commercial plans, the partnerships which we are already creating with the sports councils of each home nation, with the NFL, with the CFL, with other commercial partnerships, which some of which are starting to come through, some of which are, for obvious reasons, on hold right now as businesses out there start to wait and see what's going to happen in the long term. But absolutely fundamentally, at the heart of it will be a digital engagement and communication strategy. We are already in a world that most of us on this call possibly have not really embraced and engaged, and we now will, and we are. And I must thank some real key people who are helping me to devise this. We're working, and we've managed to secure some support from a company called 7 League. They are the digital advisors to the NFL, FIFA, Premier League, and Premier League clubs. And we've managed to secure their support and their consultancy free of charge as part of some of the work that we've been doing with Sports England over the last few months. And that gives us an opportunity to use, albeit Sport England are paying for it, we can use that across the country for us as a GB governing body. So there'll be more on that as we develop over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be communicating that out to you. And then as and when we get to playing again, what I want to then really start to do is create fabulous events and experiences. So when we play, our events and experiences are memorable, they're enjoyable, and what we're creating are very innovative experiences, as well as incredibly impactful ones. And essentially what I will be challenging all of these key pillars to do is are we creating an impact, and how do we measure that impact on the field, that impact off the field, and that impact and how we measure it socially. What is the impact of our game in our communities, and how do we measure that? And if we can measure it, it means we can create an argument, and it means we can create a strategy, it could create an ask, and it can create some investment into our sport through those very clear ones. So do we have the next slide, please? Because what I want to do now is really, as we move into all those strategy groups, and as we move into creating that impact, the playbook each of the groups I'm going to pull together is going to be challenged in these key areas, that every time they create their strategy, or when they look at it, they're creating it through an insightful approach to the decisions they're making, not a gut feel, but based on insight and evidence. That what they do will inspire and create opportunities, that those opportunities will be inclusive and will have accessible formats. More importantly, each of these groups will be able to influence our key partners and stakeholders and understand what success looks like for those partners and stakeholders, for us to deliver their expectation within our strategies. And built into that playbook of strategy making will be innovative, and will have continual improvement built in and throughout, with a long-term vision at the start of every one of those strategic plans. And ultimately, that they will create an impact into our game, and that we will make a difference to our sport. So we will be professionalizing it, we will be inspiring people to play, and play their part. And this game will go from strength to strength. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Pete, so much for that. I think that was hopefully very comprehensive and quite inspiring into everyone that's on the call in terms of what our sport is and what it could be in the future. So as we've sort of said, this is now the time that everyone here gets to ask us whatever questions they have, either about Pete's presentation and sort of the vision for the sport going forward, questions about what we've been doing, questions about finance, anything that you want to discuss. Now is the time. Mark, do you want to tell everyone how they can go about doing that?
Yeah, basically you can raise your hand, but there is also the Q&A function, which is probably the easiest way, and that way we keep control over things as far as what's been going on. And what we will do is go through each of those questions, and I will open it up to board members as well as committee members as required as we go along. I'll start with a question. There are, Pete, I will say there are a number of respondents that are saying, thank you very much for your presentation, that it's outstanding, and it's the vision is something that is shared by a number of people. So they are very thankful for what you've been able to do today.
Thank you, and also a big thank you to the many people already who've offered their support and volunteering into part and parcel of those groups. I really appreciate that, and we'll get on with building those and bringing those groups together as soon as possible.
Okay, the first question that I've got here is, why is contact being treated same as flag in terms of amount of coaches being required?
I wasn't coming up with a number. I'm just talking about we want to create the right number of coaches for all our aspects of our sport and the right quality of those coaches. I wasn't talking about a specific number. I was talking about we want to get more, and we want to create a pathway of coaches, and we want to develop those coaches to be the best they can be in whichever area. I don't think I was mentioning we're going to have the same number. I think I was talking about developing the appropriate number for our sport to grow. Some aspects of our sport may want to grow quicker and larger and need more potential resource. So that will be reflected in the requirements of each strategy. So when we, for instance, create a strategy for flag football or women's football, one of the key aspects of that insightful approach will be, what are the people requirements within that strategy? Both the level of the coaches, the quality of the coaches, the number of the coaches, etc., etc. So that will be defined by each strategic group.
Brilliant. I've got a question here. You have spoken about the future of players and structure moving towards becoming a professional outfit. Everything you have said sounds great, and I have faith we will get there. However, the key area that needs developing, especially in flag, is the level of coaching across the sport. Right now, there are perhaps a handful of high-level coaches in the country and a lot of lower-level / newer coaches, following the latest BAFCA Level 1 guidance, which will be great for getting school kids and newer teams involved with the sport. But how do you bridge the knowledge gap between grassroots / lower level and elite level play? If you look at the Women's Flag National League, there are around 3 high-performing teams and then a cliff edge to the rest. Closing this gap starts with improving the standards of coaching across the board. Is bridging the gap anywhere in your strategy?
Absolutely, and that will be the first ask of each of the. And thanks for that, Dean. I really appreciate that. I think it's a really well thought through question, and I think one of the key aspects of each, whether it be the flag group, the women's group, the football league group, whether it be the schools and colleges, it's the first thing will be, where are we right now? Let's absolutely understand, and let's not try and dress it up. Let's be really clear where we are right now, and at what level we're at, and what's the quant and the qual of all of the aspects, whether they be coaches, referees, clubs, teams, facilities, whatever aspect it is. What is the current position? And within that 10-year vision, where do we want it to be? What is our real ambition? And those things then is how you bridge that gap. I mean, some of those gaps may be more gradual and build, and as Dean says, some of those will be almost cliff edge and major gaps that we have to address quickly. And what it will also do, and I think this is one of the things that I want all these strategic groups to do, is clarify the how we're going to do all of this. Because me sitting here now painting a really big vision, and it's great, the amount of work that we're now, going to have to start to look into is going to be quite significant. And we're not going to be able to do this alone, as either the board, the executive, the commission leads, the clubs and teams. We're going to have to think much more widely. I mean, the work, I must admit, on that, I must have just thanked Wayne and the team at Bafa, who are already developing a wide number of flag resources. Can we develop more? Of course we can. But that's the understanding of what do we need to develop, and therefore what are the biggest priorities and the most urgent priorities.
Yeah, if I can kind of jump into that, if possible as well. And great question from Dean. Our focus at BAFCA has been to develop the participation aspects of coaching qualifications to start off with. So we have our kind of teachers qualification, our community clubs qualification, and our kind of revised level 1 qualification currently, as well as our kind of Flag Futures program as well, which is the coaching of our 14 to 18 year olds, which will tie in with kind of the schools program, the colleges program, but also kind of tapping into kind of our own youth and junior players, that they can actually gain a qualification and go and support the delivery in their cadet programs within their clubs and so forth. But from our next step, and we've had some discussion about this, is kind of where is our level 2 qualification for flag, and what does that look like? And rather than that just being developed on our own, that's something that will be reaching out to the likes of Dean, Alan, Kenny, as well as some of our contacts in the States, to develop that flag qualification at the next level, because the level 2 qualification for contact, some of that content is going to be transferable. However, there will need to be some specific content to develop coaches in the flag environment. And I think also one of the steps there is that now within the club structures program, moving forward, is all flag programs have to have a qualified coach, and hopefully for next year those will be 2 coaches or a level 2 coach within that. So there's been never a minimum standard previously, so hopefully moving forward all of that coaching development within flag will kind of move forward. But that is one of the kind of key targets for us in our next phase of development, is that level 2 qualification, and looking at the likes of the experienced high level coaches in the UK, and also some of our contacts overseas, and how we can develop that level 2 qualification to best support our coaches.
Thanks for that, Wayne. There was let me just find, I'm trying to find appropriate ones here to be able to bring up. Okay, Wayne, I know that I messaged you with one that was there that had been raised, and it's, while coach education is extremely important in the current strategy, appears focused on threatening people with suspension. Can you work into the approach recognition of an individual's experience?
Yeah, I think very much so. The recognition of an individual's experience is a tremendous amount of our coaches have lots of CPD that they're uploading throughout this period of time. They have developed and taken additional coaching qualifications throughout, and also a large proportion have hit the minimum standard of renewal. and unfortunately, through this period of time, there has been kind of 3 extensions to our updating and renewal process. But we're now at a situation where the minimum standard has to be established, and there's never been the auditing or the review of the registration system and the qualifications that have been uploaded to the system or haven't been uploaded to the system like we're doing at the present moment. So from our point of view, it is important to have that minimum standard due to the fact that if anything did ever happen, we need to be able to report back to the insurance company that this coach is qualified at this standard, and these are our kind of reasonings for that minimum standard and the associated KPIs and education structure associated to that. However, moving forward, once we are able to put the minimum standard in place, everything now is targeted towards the development of online qualifications, which we're working on at the present moment from a level 2 and level 3, increased amount of CPD opportunities for our coaches. We're currently piloting the USA Football level 2 contact systems. We're also working with end zone systems on a offensive accreditation process specifically for our coaches. So we want to provide as much CPD and opportunities for our coaches as possible. And I do agree that the kind of the recognition of those coaches that are putting in that extra time is something that we will be working on, and that's why we've put the CPD program in place to enable us to reward those coaches that are going above and beyond their kind of development for their players and their programs.
Thanks, Wayne. Pete, one for you. And I think I already know the answer to this one, but by not being an amateur-only league, does that mean there is an expectation that there will be player wages in the future?
I'm not suggesting that there's an expectation. What I'm actually starting to say is, what do we need to look like to be a not just an amateur-only sport? And that will be part of that group to review and look at the different levels. You know, at its, I don't know, its best or worst. At one level, it could just be that no one has to pay to play in that environment. So that would, in my view, be not amateur. It would just be, but there were different. My view would be to look at the strategic group and the consultation of what do we want that to look like? What would be best for British American football? And that's what the key aspect is here. Not what's best for those players, what is best for British American football, and what does that look like across the whole game? Now, clearly there'll be incredibly diverse opinions on this, and I absolutely expect that. But I want that conversation to be had, and I don't want it to be swept under the carpet. But I want us to be really starting to look at how do we look at that, raising that profile of our sport, of what that looks like. We have some great levels of footballers in this country and some who don't play in this country. So how do we create the right environment to recruit and retain them in this country, or bring them back, or to make our sport? I want our Brit Ball to be played in the Tottenham Stadium on the Friday night before the London games, and therefore, you know, what does that look like? And that's what I want to build and bring and build towards.
Right, thank you for that. Question from Steve Rains, and is diversity part of the DNA being developed for the national program? For example, the number of black or ethnic minority coaches. And he has a quote, "Yes, I am referring to the latest broadcast."
Yeah, no, I get that. I totally thanks for the question, Steve. I think it's a really important one. Yes, it will be. What that will look like will depend on the work that we're now doing, and the work we're doing from the inclusion and diversity group is you know, there are very different ways of approaching this. I'm working closely with a former colleague of mine, Paul Elliott, who's at the FA. I've been talking to him in a different matter, but what he's been doing at the FA has been quite incredible. But that's now starting to set percentages and numbers. Now, that may or may not be the right thing to do. The Rooney Rule may or may not be the right thing to do. But what is right for British American football and our coaches in this country to make sure that we are inclusive and create a diversity, but more importantly, create everything which is right to inspire more people to play and play a part in the sport. And that goes back to that. I do not want to get to purely ticking a number box, but I want us to get absolute clarity of how we include more people in our sport and how do we become more inclusive as a sport.
Great. There's a question here about, are we able to share attendee numbers for this session? Yes, I can actually share that at peak of Pete's vision discussion, there were 92 people on board. So thank you very much for everyone that has attended. So thank you for that. Next question is, will the school programs be addressed in regard to the school games? As from experience, primary schools will not take 3 players to an event. And that's from Coach Wilkin.
So school games will be an integral part of what we review, absolutely. I'm not sure about the question about the number. What we will look to do will be to create what and how we can engage with the school games. The first part of that is the School Games Organisers Conference is in November. We will be listening with great interest as to the future of school games at this stage. And that's not me trying to dodge an issue, but there will be a real challenge in terms of our schools' work to start with. And I want to understand how the school games will develop and how we can then develop with school games and school games organisers, because they are a great resource for us to engage with. But what I want it to do, I want it to be, is what is right for our young players and our sport in those environments. What I'm not wanting to do is to bend our sport and what we want to meet someone else's objectives. There has to be give and take, of course, but it's what's right for our players and the development of our sport, which is key and paramount.
I think just to add one thing onto that as well, Pete, is one of the things that we've discussed, and I was at the meeting with Pete and the NFL talking about flag programs and schools programs and so forth. One of the things that we need to ensure all of the school programs provide for us is that link to the pathway to our community clubs, because what we don't want to do is turn on some year 5 and year 6s to American football, and then all of a sudden they've got no pathway to join a community club in their local area. So everything goes hand in hand from a schools program to our community clubs programs to enable that pathway for those young people to participate.
Right.
Thanks. Yeah, I really agree with that. That's good. Very, very well made point, Wayne. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Wayne. The next one is from Tom Green. How will Bafa accommodate the needs and unique challenges that rural and more remote clubs face within Bafa's 10-year strategy to avoid the sport being concentrated in the big cities?
That's a really good point, and American football will not be exclusive to us, that challenge and that problem. One of the things that we have to look at is, and I talked about it earlier in terms of the formats that we create and how do we create inclusive and accessible formats for all, and what those formats look like, from slightly smaller sided to making sure that there's opportunity that we can create. I don't know, could it be central venues? There's a whole range of things, but we have to be really clear that that our sport is accessible for all. Now, there will be elements of geography in there, and there'll be elements of where we focus the development. But the main thing is to come back to that point I made at the start of the strategy development. Where are we right now? Where have we got football? Where have we got sustainable football? And where do we need to develop that to ensure that is long-term sustainable? But it is an incredibly strong point. we always talk almost immediately about inner city deprivation indexes and indices, when there is still, at the extremities, whether it be northern Scotland or rural southwestern and East Anglia, there is big areas of our country which are inaccessible and have equally deprived areas, all of which we will look at and review and prioritise in terms of how we get the resource to invest in them.
Thanks, Pete. There are a number of questions in regard to finances, and if it's okay with people, I would like to actually group them together. But I'd like to focus on Pete's vision questions, if we can, to start off with. There's a question here. In my experience, every sport I know in this country suffers from a shortage of referees at grassroots levels. How do you see football attracting more people into refereeing so coaches do not have to self-officiate? I will open Davey's mic up as well so that he can talk.
Yeah, good. But if I just go first, I absolutely agree that this is again something that is not just focused for officials on American football. It's the same in Football Association cricket, which I'm still involved with in different ways. What we have to do is start to create accessibility to our programs and our training earlier. So there's a great deal we can do when we're talking about schools and college programs. That's not just about participation, it's about how we create a level of involvement in officiating as well. So, and equally, how do we start to create minimum requirements on universities and clubs about qualifying people to officiate in our game? But starting younger, and also starting to understand how we can work with other sports collectively, potentially, would be my comments. Davey, I'll leave you to, you're far more worldly wise in this matter.
Davey, I think you've got yourself on mute. I don't seem to be able to unmute you.
Okay, well, and on the basis that, is he on?
He is on, yeah. Davey's there,
but he can't speak. Okay.
No.
But one of the things that Davey and his team are already doing is starting to review and look at the way in which we can engage and qualify more referees. So it absolutely is a challenge to many sports, and we will have the same challenges. But what I'm hoping to do is the contacts that I have to work with our referees is to work with our contacts in other sports and see where we can learn more, how we can potentially look at different aspects where there's been examples of great practice and replicate them within our sport. But let's not go out there saying there isn't a magic silver bullet for this that creates it. It will be hard work. It'll be about recruitment, and it'll be about recruiting in different areas, and then it's about retention and about development of those officials, which I know our colleagues at Bafa are very skilled in doing and are working very closely with us to develop that.
And it aligns with the question that Grant Griffiths has made as well. As development and growth in both coaching and in refereeing, can we not have a youth age program so that we can offer a pathway at a younger age to those who realise they want to be part of the sport, but realise maybe playing isn't for them?
I absolutely agree. And one of the key successes we had when I was at the Football Association in our referee development program was a young referees development program. Now there may be different challenges in our sport, but both rugby league, rugby union, and football are doing some really strong work with those younger people and making that a career of being part of the lifelong involvement in their sport. And we would be doing exactly the same and looking at how we can do that.
Great. Okay, from Marvin. Hi all. Pete, you spoke of inclusion, and previous Bafa statements have pressed forward your willingness to address global diversity issues. Will Bafa be reaching out to its members who are currently locked discussions on the matter? Your zero tolerance policy is welcomed, but I think at this point it's fair to say that the delayed reaction is having a negative impact on what was supposed to be a positive exercise.
I think the answer is yes. We will be reaching out, and we have reached out, and we will continue to reach out. I think it's an incredibly difficult area at times. I think it's one that we need to be absolutely around zero tolerance, but absolutely around making sure that we are challenging ourselves constantly, that we are being inclusive, and we should be challenged as well.
Yeah. You spoke about stating what pitches people need to play on. 3G pitches, for example, are very expensive and not affordable for all clubs.
That's true, but grass will be our first generation turf is equally one of those acceptable surfaces that we can play on, and we should be playing on. I think my main concern is moving away, and I think they're very few and far between now, but where people play on second generation artificial surfaces, i.e. concrete bases with a carpet on the top. So I think it's more grass and 3G, not 3G only. So I wouldn't be looking to suggest it would only be 3G. And if it is 3G, what are the minimum standards of that surface that they should be playing on? But grass, absolutely. First generation, good turf is something that we will be part and parcel of our facility strategy.
Great. Okay, now the couple for Wayne. One from Steve Rains. Do CPD opportunities necessarily need to be limited to those offerings from BAFCA?
No, not at all. What we've stated on our website and when we release the CPD points is the table that we've outlined goes through some recommended CPD opportunities. However, if there are other opportunities that are being delivered and that coaches are engaging in, if they can just email us, and then we will be able to discuss the appropriate CPD points for that activity. Also, one of the things that we're kind of in discussion with is even more associations like UK Coaching and so forth, and being able to deliver more and more and direct people to more and more appropriate CPD courses. But it might be the fact that somebody participates in a safeguarding qualification or a first aid qualification within their workplace. That's completely okay to upload into their CPD on the Esolve system and get the accredited points for that.
Right.
Okay.
And Paul writes a note here. With regard to the current contact coaching qualifications, what is the focus on getting level 3 and 4 qualifications up and running? As there are plenty of good ground level coaches, but managing and running a team is completely different. Therefore, having a club with management type coaches is key to developing clubs internally and sustainability going forward.
Completely agree, Paul. Where we're currently at the present moment, part of the Bafa investment and our KPIs associated to that investment relate to the development of our coaching qualifications and coach education program. One of the things that we are working on currently is the movement of our level 2 qualification to a partial online provision, and our level 3 qualification, which we have the template for, which will again be moved to a online provision. That'll be a dedicated e-learning platform that we are currently working with sports structures on. As part of that, we also, some time ago, one of our board members, Ian Tucker, and also Adam Koppel at the time, just before I came on as president, I'd also broach the aspects of a leadership and management qualification, which could be undertaken by coaches, but also club admins. So that again is something that we will be revisiting moving forward, as well as keep promoting some of those alternative CPD opportunities. So Educare have some qualifications on there that relate to leadership and management. There is also, as part of our level 3 qualification, the Open University provide a coaches qualification, which again relates to leadership and management. So for us, it's about looking at those other qualifications that fit with what coaches need as part of our sport, but also then as well modelling that across other sporting contexts as well. So we know that the leadership and management qualification sits within the RFU as well. So how can we model a qualification that is applicable to our sport?
Okay, thank you. Coach Wilkin asks, as you know, there is a huge demand for 11v11 football at youth and junior level. Do we have plans to follow other sports and set up feeder teams for the GB squad as in division teams?
Very simply, as part of the whole review of national programs from Mike Callan and the head coaches, and then for the DNA, that will be absolutely part and parcel of, you know, what do we need in place to develop our players in the best possible way. Again, it all comes back down to everything I said earlier about being player focused. What do we need to do at the appropriate age and stage to develop the players at the best point to be the best they can be? Not overlaying adult things onto young players or overlaying other sports programs onto ours. Is reviewing what we have, absolutely defining what we need, and then creating the clear plans and interventions that we need to do at the appropriate age and stage of that individual's development. And that's the critical factor about having that as part of the long-term vision and the DNA of what we want those players to do.
Thank you. And there was a question here from Gareth. Is making GB participation free for athletes a goal as part of this vision?
I can't predispose what the answers will be about its equal strategy, but I'll be. That's one of the things that I will be looking at of how we resource GB going forward, without a doubt. I said, I think I don't know if it was on this call or whether it was on the AGM call. I find it incredulous that in any sport, not just British American football, in any sport, the ultimate goal of playing for your national side shouldn't be at a cost. Yeah. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff we have to do between where we are now to where we want to be, but absolutely, I would, and again, without predetermining what some of the groups will say, but absolutely has to be part of that long-term vision. But yeah, it's not something that you pay to play for your country.
And the last one that I'm seeing here in regard to the actual strategy, apart from a message there from Dean, which I will answer separately. Are there any plans to discuss the problems surrounding the content and quality of the GB men's team? Although it's a painful subject, I believe that both coaches and players deserve at least to be part of the discussion so that we can put the matter of its suitability to bed. I think it's important that our newly appointed coaching staff are given the best opportunity to succeed, and I'm not sure it's possible without having this conversation in earnest.
I absolutely, and when I go back to the fundamental part of the 10-year vision is about being player focused. Absolutely crucial within that player focus is their contribution to the game. We've recently established an athletes commission for our game. That's not solely GB, I accept, but it's about listening to the athlete's voice. You know, it's incredibly important that if we're going to create a strategy which is player focused, we then have to listen to what those players say.
Brilliant. Are there any plans to pull Bucks football into line with NCAA practices and procedures? as our player pathways improve, this will become more and more relevant.
I think that's a fair point, but I don't think we should be necessarily aligning ourselves to NCAA. We should be doing what is absolutely the key thing for British American football. If that is aligning that, then fair play. But if it's about what is right for us to develop the best players we can develop, the best programs we can develop, that is focused on the player and their development and focused on what is the best for British American football, and that will continually be what we do. Yes, we will be professionalising what we do in every aspect, on and off the field. I keep coming back to that. But it'll be what is right for British American football, not overlaying somebody else's programme on ours.
Brilliant. And there was a question here from Dean, and he said, during the strategy, you asked for volunteers to help drive us forward. How do we get in touch?
I will be putting out a follow-up to today from the AGM and from the vision, and I will be putting a very clear level of how you respond. And in the first instance, just email me directly, but actually I'll be going through that in a little bit more structured way a little bit later, probably on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
But thank you, Dean. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Now, there were a number of questions that we had, or some questions that we had left over from the AGM regarding finances. And I know that I did ask those people. So in fairness to them, I would like to actually ask those questions now in the time that we have left. Players for the National League were given refund, but coaches were not. Monies were kept to invest in development. I don't believe coaches were even asked for their input. I'm not sure who wants to answer that.
Wayne, do you want to go first? And I'm happy to follow.
Yeah, there was a discussion between Bafa and Bafka relating to the refunds and also the amount of time that had been undertaken as part of the book season, as well as also the amount of coaches that had currently registered, as well as the amount of training sessions as part of the community season during that time. From that point of view, Bafa was in agreement that there would be a opportunity to invest in BAFCA moving forward to support us due to the fact of reduced registration fees moving forward and the ability to continue to develop the coach education structure, as well as coach development opportunities throughout the kind of lockdown period of time. Obviously, there was a large amount of work with kind of virtual convention, online Zooms, round tables throughout the kind of lockdown period of time. And then also there has been a stringent KPIs put together for the funding that has been delivered to BAFCA. Obviously, we haven't kind of rushed out and spent that money. We wanted to ensure that the appropriate KPIs were in place, and we're in a situation where we were able to target particular partners to enable the best service possible for the development of our coaches. The kind of few areas that we are working on, as I've mentioned previously on this call, is the e-learning platform, which will enable our level 2 to be a mixed economy of both online learning and face-to-face practical. The level 3 qualification will go online, and we're in discussion at the present moment of potentially some of our level 1 qualification going online and moving away from USA football, because there is some kind of US specific content within that that's not applicable to ourselves. As well as that, we're obviously working from a flag development and a core skills fundamentals point of view, whereby we will be pushing out a app to all members in hopefully the January time. We're currently defining what will be on the app, but that will be core fundamental drills, skills and techniques, flag football core development skills, rules and regulations for flag football, and flag football playbooks on there. So that will be rolled out to all coaches free of charge as part of that funding there as well. So there is lots of work going on to support the development of coaches. Obviously, we were hoping to be in a situation as well to run an interim convention in the January time. However, that is looking extremely unlikely. So we will continue to look to invest with the KPI structure that we've put in place to develop our coaches moving forward. And so hopefully that will answer the question of how it came about that there was no refund, the amount of time that had been taken place already within the coaching context, and then the development work that's happening to engage and support all of our coaches.
If I could also add, no, I've nothing to add. I mean, that's a very comprehensive answer. I think it's more to the fact of that's what we did last year going forward. And I think it goes back to the questions at the AGM earlier. We will be reviewing what we do in the 2020-21 season in relation to what that all looks like. So it won't necessarily mean what we did in 2020 will be the same as what we do in 21. We will be very clearly reviewing that, as we are also will be looking and reviewing at our investment into the Coaches Association going forward. Is where the biggest priorities lie. Is if we can help accelerate some of that, we will continue to review that with Wayne and his team.
And Wayne, I think you're going to end up having for any of the individual questions. Ian, I know that you've put out a question there, and that there was another question there from Chris Warren in regard to the refunding of the money. Can I ask if perhaps you could actually address that directly with Wayne from a BAFCA perspective? I think that would be the best way to be able to answer that question rather than going over things on the same topic.
Yeah, if anyone wants to contact me, it's just president@bafca.co.uk. You can get in touch with me that way. I'll also put it on the group as well.
And Pete, this comes in line with what you were just saying there about 2021 season, and there are a number of questions about what's going to happen with 2021. But there's a question here from Gareth. Whilst it's obvious that there needs to be agility built to the league's stance on refunds due to COVID, I would hope that the league had already had a solid plan in place for refunds in the event of a second complete season for the majority of members with no league football. Could this be shared with the membership? And secondly, I understand if the committee may not wish to release its current plan, as it may well change, but you could at least confirm that there are plans in place now for refunds if the season is reduced, rather than something that will be considered at the time the reduction of the season occurs.
Yeah, yes, there are plans in place. The plans depend absolutely, as Gareth said there, depends upon when the season curtails, if in fact it does, what other ability we've had of being able to play or not. It will depend upon what potential support we get from government. I think, as I said on the AGM this morning, we're in active consultation with DCMS at the moment about our investment into sports, and to in the same way that every other sector of society is looking for government investment. And I hate to use the word bailout, but for some governing bodies that is actually happening right now. We're a party to that letter to the Prime Minister, party to a letter and submission to the Treasury. So all those things will depend on what that number looks like and what that percentage refund will be. But absolutely, there are clear plans in place to look at refunds. And again, I repeat what I said this morning. Some of our members will be in some economically challenged situations, and the last thing that we will do as a sport is just look to charge people for the sake of it. But equally, we will make sure that at the moment, the only income we have as a sport is our membership fees. So what I'm trying to do and create is the survival of our sport, and the making sure that we get to a point that when we do get back to play, we're in a strong position to do so.
Right. There are a number of questions in relation to the 2021 contact season and in relation to the dates and changing timeframes for the dates. One of the specific questions is around, sorry, I'm just trying to find the actual question, my apologies. We're talking around, the makeup of the number of players have said that they are highly unlikely to sign up until there is a greater clarity over the makeup of the season. By enforcing the 31st of October renewal deadline, Bafa are restricting our ability to effectively recruit players and holding an effective pre-season. While some people consider rates to be inexpensive, this is not the case for majority, and with the ambiguity, the refund policy, the 2020 refund policy has not helped. Why can't the current renewal deadline be pushed until the 31st of January to allow people to make an informed decision?
If I could just, very good questions and totally understandable and are very valid. We have a board meeting next Friday at which the discussion around season, return to play, refunds, policies, and potential changes to some of our current deadlines will be discussed and agreed and then communicated. We absolutely understand that everything is changing, and I think whilst we've been on our call, I think we've gone from a government saying I think there's going to be a national lockdown to there's a press conference later today, so it looks like there probably will be. So all of which will have an impact on those discussions next Friday. So I'm sorry I can't be more definitive at this stage, but it is a state of constant change and constant flux of which we are, and that's my point about intending to be completely agile, but equally absolutely open and transparent and consistent and understanding of our members' situations.
Can I just add something to that, please? Obviously, if there are coaches that are hesitant about registering through this period of time, the one thing I would like to ask, and I will put out there as well, through social media and email, is if they can get their profiles and their certifications uploaded and in order. So they can do those things without formally re-registering. That's just about them developing and ensuring their profile is correct. So ensuring that they've got the right qualifications uploaded in the correct place and it is a legitimate PDF or image of their certification would be great in that aspect.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. There was a question in regard to the requirement or the proof of a club bank account. And whilst there is an understanding that the demand of a proof of club bank account and proof of even a summary of annual accounts, but why is the request for cash flow information? It seems unnecessarily intrusive into the affairs of your member clubs.
Is Warren on the call? Because Warren is far more articulate at explaining this than I am. If Warren is on the call and able, sorry Warren, I'm not giving you a hospital pass here. I think it's just that you articulate this much better than I do. If Warren is on the call.
Warren is on the call.
Is he able?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Warren. It would just be really good for you to just have an opportunity to explain that this is not about us being intrusive or looking to understand what people have in a bank account. It's just looking at and I'll let you describe.
Yes, of course. The process we're trying to get to is trying to, first of all, when it's to do with the bank accounts, we want to ensure that clubs aren't being run out of people's personal bank accounts, because that's against all good behaviours, and that it should be in a club bank account. We're not interested in seeing has a financial situation that's separate from any individual, which can open people up to any risk. They need to see accounts is that an organisation is either unincorporated or incorporated, and as an incorporated organisation, you'd have to post your accounts online. As an unincorporated one, you would have to produce accounts to protect your members. So as an NGB, we are protecting our member clubs, our member teams, and our individual members, so that everybody is confident that what's happening with money is exactly what it should be. So we're not looking at I'm personally not looking at the figures per se. I just want to know and get a picture of how clubs are structured and how they look after their money. And from that will come opportunities for us to provide workshops. So we have teamed up with Sports England and Club Matters, where we will provide free workshops to help teams improve their accounting. And then the byproduct to that, and much more important, I think, product to that is that it will help clubs actually start to plan their finances in a way that they can grow reserve accounts, plan for future investments. If for instance, if you're running a club that owns its own helmets, you've got a 10-year life on those. If you bought them in 1 year and you bought a high number, 10 years from now, you're going to have a massive cash flow situation to replace all those helmets. So it's about helping clubs plan and move forward and share the best practices we possibly can. So we're not trying to dive in and look at people's individual situations, because clubs are run very much differently to one another, but we're looking at protection and planning for the future.
Okay.
And also on that, and I think I'm just repeating what I said earlier, I think it's about is us and the work that Warren's doing, and also creating more and more resource to support those clubs and those teams in all of those regards, which will also then be aligned to our strategy and to help those clubs help us deliver that strategy. So that's absolutely clear as part of what we're talking about.
Looking at the chat, I think people are saying basically what Warren said is not. Is they're more worried about having to produce a cash flow statement, and they're not talking about producing sort of proof of a bank account. And Warren, you can correct me if I've got this wrong. I mean, for me, the proof of a cash flow statement shows that someone in your organization has a sense of what your expenditure and expenses are, so that we can say, we feel that you as a club are financially stable. So if we're letting our membership know that these are the clubs they can play in, we feel that the club will be there not just this year, but going forward. So it's all about ensuring that the clubs have financial sustainability. And Warren, I think, Pete, you can attest to this. We're putting things in place that we appreciate that a lot of these clubs maybe don't have accounting systems or people in the club in which are familiar with these types of resources. And there's things we're going to be doing as a NGB to assist you guys in getting up to standards, as opposed to saying, sort it out yourself. We are here to support you in getting up to these accreditations, which hopefully will help you have a longer term and more sustainable club going forward.
Indeed, I would echo that completely. And in fact, I can let everyone know that we're in discussions with an accounting package provider, and hopefully we'll come to terms with them. And that'll be a kind of service that Bafa can pass on as one of our key commercial partnerships.
Okay. I know. Okay, we have had a number of other discussions in regard to the 2021 season, and I know that a number of people are asking about the relaxation around the requirements for registered players, etc. And we, as Pete has mentioned previously, in relation to the 2021 season, as everyone is aware, it is extremely fluid. And obviously with the announcement that the government are making, got a press conference this afternoon, the whole situation could change again. So we would need to defer until we have actually had the opportunity to be able to obviously review. And then, as Pete mentioned before, that there is a board meeting next Friday where further things will be discussed. Pete, there was a question that was asked, and Nicole, you might be able to answer this as well. With us meeting on Friday to discuss what's going to happen as far as registrations and the matters aligned with that, Does that mean that the registrations will be extended out post that 6th of November meeting from today? Because at the moment, the 31st of October is the deadline date.
I mean, Pete, I'm sure you'll agree with me on
Yeah.
here. No one, and I say this categorically, no one is going to be penalized, or no one is going to be not allowed to play if they don't register by today. That was our traditional deadline. We appreciate it's fluid, and we obviously want to encourage people to register, but at the same time we appreciate why they're not. So I can say that from my perspective, and Pete,
Yep.
please feel free to
No.
disagree. No one is going to be penalized for this, guys. We're trying to be as flexible as possible. We want everyone to play, so anything we can do to help you guys during this time, we're going to do, including relaxing sort of deadlines and things like that.
Exactly, I totally agree. Yeah, we got, as I think we have to be agile, we have to be flexible, we have to be focused on our players and our members more than ever before. And well, my commitment to everyone is to do that exactly. We're in this together. It's not great. It's not what we would want. And as of, if you like, tomorrow, we start on the first day of our 10-year journey. The absolute, to do that, we will be doing that collectively, and we will not be looking to penalise anybody, or it will absolutely just be about taking this sport forward and doing absolutely the right things and doing things right.
Okay. Okay, so Marvin has got a couple of questions. No, sorry, Marvin's got one question here. And he's said about, earlier we spoke about KPIs. Is there anything in place which tracks, measures, records our growth, not only internally, but externally to the global market? Only the models we run shows a devastating decline in terms of our natural player game pool, and that our continental adversaries. Has this been tracked in the past? Will it be tracked in the future? As a member, I'm worried that the limited experience, football-wise, no disrespect meant, contained within Bafa is causing a bubble of false security, and that it's this bubble which causes what many of my professional colleagues see as a lack of urgency.
It will absolutely be part and parcel of the consideration of, when I talked about what the current position is in all aspects. We have to not just take a view of what we do here. Yes, it's got to be right for British American football, but we have to be influenced. And I go back to the point, if there is influence from externally and we can compare ourselves against other benchmarks, that will absolutely be part of what we will do. I think my first slide, or part of one of the things about creating the impact, our decision making has to be created from insight and evidence. The things that have just been described will be helpful in terms of insight and evidence to creating the right plans for the growth of our sport.
Okay. Right. Steve Rains says, I renewed yesterday because we have practice tomorrow. Was I wrong to do that?
Renewed what? Team membership? Oh, sorry, coach membership, presumably. I'm sorry, I'm not.
That's what I understand, yes. Let me see if I can.
I think if everybody's getting transferred, there's no one's making any mistakes here, and no one is getting penalised if they are being accepted into the league. I'm not saying we're not accepting people into the league. We're just looking at what do we now need to review and look at given the current situation, and that's what we can't do collectively as a board until next Friday. So, things, as I said before, things are changing, and all of those things we will be reviewing. And I'll work with our registrations team and Warren about how we get some comms out on that as soon as practically possible today to take out of any uncertainty.
Right.
Yeah. The point I was actually making was that for anyone coaching in university football, that ship has already sailed, because registrations expired today, is it? And if you've got practice tomorrow, if you want to be insured, you better be registered.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
You know, the talk about next Friday, it's yeah, like I said, that ship sailed.
But next Friday is about a wider. It's not just about the coaching fees for today. That's a wider discussion. If if you're coaching tomorrow, clearly you want to make sure you're insured and covered appropriately. So
that, I think Pete's right, Steve. I think the thing is, it's about people who are looking to register for next season. If you're currently actively coaching, playing, participating, you should be registered, because actually you are participating in the sport. I think the question is more for people deciding whether or not they want to register for next season early, etc., and not quite sure what to do. I'm guessing, based on what's going on now, that any games and practice sessions probably most likely may not even go ahead tomorrow or next week as well. So again, I think if you're playing football, you need to be insured and registered. But for those who aren't decided yet or unsure of how things are going to progress, I think, from my understanding, that was more of the question.
Okay, thanks for that, Nicole. But I think the point then is it's almost pointless talking about deadlines, because the deadline for National League players to register, I think the minimum numbers, the date in the rules is something January or February, somewhere like that. So there's no compulsion for people to go out and register now, unless they are going to take part in some activity.
Steve, I think you're right there, in the sense that it is about being insured and being able to participate in activity. But I think where we're at the moment, yes, the Bucks season, and there are a lot of Bucks teams that are training at the present moment. However, there are also a lot of other teams training at the present moment, both in community leagues and also in flags. So I think it's really important to reiterate that if you are participating currently in activity, regardless of what's going on nationally or so forth, you do need to register by the deadline of today. However, what happens with the season and things moving forward is, I think, what Bafa will be discussing next week.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. That's. I think that makes it really clear. Thank you for that, for both of you.
Okay.
Sorry, Mark. I don't know if there's been a question. I think somebody mentioned it earlier around the Bucks season.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, for anybody, the Bucks season is currently, I think they're the best part of 83 universities that have agreed to take part in a university season, which is due to take place from January. And as Steve has just pointed out, people are training already towards that, which is still the intent to play. And we've now created the structures for that to happen. That is still subject to our governing body return to play guidance, which is currently accept that it will still be able to play from January through to April. Clearly, any changes that may take place, that might impact on that. But just so everybody's aware, the university season is still planned and is structured to take place from January to April, and the universities have got until the 13th of November to confirm completely their participation in
that. Okay, there is a question here that is from Simon Bucket. So if you're not committing to refunds as it stands, Bafa and BAFCA are currently looking to the membership to financially prop up the governing body in the event that there is no season. The backup plan is a government Sport England bailout.
I confirm that if there was no season, there would be a refund policy. Absolutely clear that we will, if there is a curtailment of the season, there will be a refund. I made that fairly clear earlier. What I'm also saying is the level of our refunds will depend on a number of factors, i.e. if there's a curtailment of the season, if the season doesn't take place, or whether the level of bailout will be part and parcel of that consideration. So there will be refunds. If there is no season or the season is curtailed, there will be refunds. I made that clear earlier.
Um, I am very conscious of the time and the fact that we have actually gone over what we had allocated, but there are obviously a number of questions in relation to the finances. Nicole, how would you like to do this? Are you happy to continue, or are people happy to continue? There are currently 66 people.
I think I think what would be ideal, Mark, is I would imagine a lot of the finance questions probably are around a couple of different themes.
Yeah,
So if we could maybe group those into a couple of themes and try to fire off those answers. I do think, for just being respectful of everyone's time who's been on calls this morning since about 10 a.m., what we'll do is let's try to hammer a couple of the key finance questions, Mark, and then if there is anything that is outstanding, please drop Pete, myself, anybody a line. We will individually answer any questions you absolutely have. Also, the AGM from this morning will be available to view, and a lot of the finance questions were addressed in that session. But I think we do need to sort of do a couple of those, Mark, and then wrap up just to be respectful of everyone's time.
sure. Right. So I know that it's I'm going to finish. I will finish on a positive. I mean, I think this has been a very positive session. But I will finish with my the last question that's asked, because I know that it's something that the board has discussed at length. But one of the questions here is, and it's from Martin Munsey. It feels a lot of issues raised throughout the AGM and in the Q&A that most of the issues have centred on some sort of lack of clarity or transparency in communication. It feels like actions are being taken with the best interests in mind. However, it seems to be without prior/open engagement with the wider community to see if this is how we want to move forward, etc. Do you think we could communicate with wider community in Britball may be reviewed?
I'll go first, and I'm sure Nicole will have a view of the overall. One of the key aspects of what I've been doing over the last few months is trying to create more Q&As and comms opportunities that will become even more available, particularly as we get the groups together around and creating the strategy groups. What I'd also look at is, as you say, far more opportunities around the comms opportunities and this wider and more transparent process, and we will be looking to do that as part and parcel of the strategic groups, but also of a wider comms platform as well.
Just to echo that, I don't disagree with anything Pete said. I mean, I appreciate that it seems like there's lots of decisions being made without wider consultation. I think, just being really frank, it is impossible to consult with the entire membership on every single decision that is made in the sport. And I'm not going to promise that that is going to be the case going forward. It's not practical. But when there are significant changes being made to the sport, you're looking at sort of things like we've discussed today, Pete's 10-year vision, the consultations will be there. They have been going on with Pete. He's been making his rounds across the country. And what I would say categorically is, I've been really impressed with the level of engagement and questions and comments, today in all these forums that we have. Don't wait for us to have these forums to let us know what you guys think. Email us, get in touch. And I'll say social media is not the way to get in touch formally with Bafa. I personally do not check social media. People feed things back to me, but if you want to speak to me, my number's on all of my emails there. Pete is the same. Drop us a line, let us know what's on your mind throughout the year, because then we can actually potentially give you more clarity or point you in the right direction, or invite to sort of engage with us in more specific manners. But our communication, I think, has definitely improved over the last 2 years. Can it be better and more transparent? Absolutely. And like I said earlier, every day, hopefully we're doing better than we were doing the day before. And that's all I can promise.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, question that I have here from Keith Schofield. Will there be a process in place from Bafa to monitor, inspect and approve clubs' return to play protocols, such as risk assessments, pre-practice screening, etc.? At the moment, it seems to be taken purely on trust, and many teams have potentially not got enough in place to be considered organised and so exempt from rule of six law. In my opinion, monitoring is just as important for members' safety as is inspecting financial fitness.
Now, I would agree. What we're not is a police force for COVID. So a lot of that does have to be taken on trust. But one of the things that we'll starting to look at is how we do far more of that in terms of making sure that things are right. And one of the things I would say is a vast majority of clubs have demonstrated their fitness by without being asked, have sent in their risk assessment and have shown very clearly what they're doing and how they're doing it, without us wanting or needing to become a police force. But obviously, it's something that I'm very aware of, that we are currently under license to play. It's as simple as that. We are. If we didn't have our protocols and our return to play roadmap, we would be unable to play. It's as simple as that. We would be under the rules of normal, a rule of six, etc., etc. So what we have is a license. One of the things that we will have to do, and we will continue to do so, is where we find and see that that's not done, we will act, and we're acting on the best interest of everyone in the game to make sure that if the license is rescinded, none of us can play. So I think that's one of those key things that of the how we do that. And Keith makes a very, very good point, which I do support. But it's a question of the how we do it, and ensuring that we don't look as though we're coming down to try and catch people out. We're doing it for the good of our sport, to maintain that license to play.
There's a question here from Tom Green, where he says, as we're in particularly challenging economic times, is it going to be possible to have payment plans in place in terms of registrations to allow for individuals who are going through financial hardships a chance to pay for registration in small increments?
It's something that isn't currently available with our current registration platform, although one of the things that we're constantly doing as part of the whole governance review is looking and reviewing of what can we do to be more engaged with our customers and our members, and how would that look, and what can we do with that. So not saying yes to that specifically, but we've got to look at different elements of that. There's also, we have to measure that up against the cost. There's usually an additional cost to doing that, and we have to understand the cost benefit ratio of that. So but absolutely something that we will continue to do so and review.
And I am just trying to find something else here. One for you, Pete. The latest report shows that we have a clear pathway to the CFL, not easy, but clear. Although I welcome any new relationship and applaud Bafa for having secured it, I must ask the question, how will we be preparing our athletes to compete what is widely professionally known to be a different game with different skill sets?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think what we're doing currently is just try and create opportunities for our players to demonstrate that level of athleticism and ability to transition into the sport generally of football. One of the things that we're doing currently is working closely with Bafa to start to look at how we prepare our players more openly around the standards of their strength and conditioning, their ability to to work at a combine level for those that want to do that, but equally just to improve our strength and conditioning generally, so we can get people taking part and even potentially competing against each other on those levels of athleticism and strength and conditioning. But one of the things that is really clear is, yes, there are differences, but it is an opportunity, and I want to make sure that our players have every opportunity to compete in football, whether that be in the US or whether that be in Canada or elsewhere. But perhaps more importantly, what I'm looking to do all the time is how do we create what is right for British American football and focus on those players and inspire them to play at the best level they can possibly do so.
Brilliant. And being at 1:20 in the afternoon, if Nicole, if you are happy that this is the final question, I would like to actually put a question to you, Pete and Nicole and the board. Is there any thought of changing the outdated Bafa logo? Have something new, fresh and inviting.
I'd like to just say, can everybody just hang on till the next few days and see what comes out? And it's a tease, I know, but let's just say that in a 10-year vision, we're looking and reviewing the whole of how we look and what our brand looks like.
Right. Thanks, Pete and guys, for that. So I'm well aware that it is probable that not everybody's questions were answered or were able to be asked. I genuinely invite everyone to come offline. I've already had messages in my email during this call, on LinkedIn, etc. I'm sure Pete and you guys will as well. If we haven't answered your questions, whether that's about specific financial information, the future, past, any problems you have, please do reach out to us and we will get back to you ASAP with those questions. I had about 4 or 5 emails just this morning, so we'll continue to engage with you on this. Again, I can't thank everyone enough. I know that the feedback and everything we have is because we all have the same reason for being here, which is to make our sport as best as it can be. And sometimes we might disagree on how we're going to do that, but we all have the same intent and want to move this forward. So thank you so much for participating. I will reiterate Pete's point about volunteers and stepping up. Again, I've already had 2 or 3 messages from people asking to get involved. Again, let us know if there's any specific areas that you feel you can help. We can find things for you to be supporting us on. And any official positions in the organization, commission leads and things will continue to be openly and actively sourced, but that doesn't mean that we cannot use volunteers in other areas of the sport. So please do get in touch there. Pete, any final remarks?
Only to thank people for absolutely everything they do. I've loved the ability and the opportunity to have this level of debate, and indeed, while sometimes we wanted this to be in person, there is an element, given our geography, of how we do versions of this more often. And I think one of those advantages of lockdown and COVID is we've all discovered the power of Zoom and other appropriate video conferencing. So I think it's something that we're going to embrace more so going forward. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the debate. Thank you. And one of those things, I've not been able to read any body language or anybody's responses, but I'm very excited to be in the position I'm in and look forward immensely, albeit in challenging times, to professionalize this sport and inspire more people to play a part.
Great.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much, everyone. Mark, again, I want to personally thank you for organizing all of this. I know it can be challenging, so thank you for that. And again, guys, I can't keep saying this. Please communicate with us officially, not on social media. Send us emails, give us a call. That's the best way to get in touch and to get your voices heard and your opinions out there, and we can engage with you in a really constructive way. So everyone have a happy Halloween. Hopefully everyone has fun things planned, and I look forward to engaging with you guys more over the next coming year and hopefully season. So thanks so much.